This is our first witness
Mr.
today.
Chairman,
Oh, yes. Yes.
I have
Member
a
Wicker?
brief opening statement.
Oh, sorry. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. U.S. manufacturers, retailers, consumers, and workers face enormous challenges stemming from freight and supply chain congestion. The effect will become even more pronounced as Christmas is upon us, and families are trying to purchase gifts for their loved ones amid soaring prices. These transportation bottlenecks show no signs of letting up. High levels of freight congestion are expected well into next year. I have heard from many supply chain stakeholders about the complexity of moving such a vast amount of goods, and indeed, the situation is complex. We've all seen images of ships waiting for miles offshore to unload their cargo. The lack of port terminal and warehouse space continues, as well as limitations on intermodal equipment and workforce disruptions. All of this makes it harder for truckers and railroads as they work to move containers. On top of all this, vaccine mandates could have a major impact on the transportation sector. The trucking industry estimates that the employer-based vaccination mandate could result in the loss of up to 37% of drivers for covered companies. Mr. Chairman, we simply cannot absorb that level of disruption. It would be impossible to cover every aspect of the supply chain challenges in one sitting. But I appreciate Senator Peters and Senator Fisher for holding today's hearing. I also want to join Senator Fisher in urging the committee to hold additional hearings on the supply chain with witnesses from the administration and from land-based transportation operators. Recently, I led a letter with several of my colleagues requesting a briefing from the administration on how they plan to address these supply chain issues. I'd like, at this point, Mr. Chairman, to ask unanimous consent to insert that letter into the record at this point.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. The administration has made a few attempts at solving the problems, such as announcing back in early October that the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach would be open 24/7. But as the Washington Post reported just a week ago, that has yet to happen. And at this point, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record that Washington Post story confirming that this is yet to happen.
Without objection, so entered.
Supply chains are still jammed up. In fact, just one port of Los Angeles terminal has experimented, just one, with 24/7 operations. But according to the port director, quote, "We've had very few takers," unquote, to this one experiment in one port of Los Angeles. Very few takers for those extended hours because of a shortage of truckers and warehouse workers. They seemed reluctant to show up at 3 in the morning to load goods onto their trucks. The administration, and this does really concern me, the administration has claimed that the number of vessels waiting off ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach is decreasing. The only way they can make that claim is that they are using a new counting method, requiring ships to queue up over 150 miles off the California coast. As of December 4th, over 96 ships were waiting for berths. And at this point, Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a Bloomberg article in this regard.
Without objection, will be entered.
In other words, there are just as many ships still out there. Cooking the numbers is not a solution. And I'm disappointed at the administration for attempting to suggest that that has been a solution. I've been disappointed by the resistance to modernizing port and freight operations. For example, automated terminals and trucks or new technologies could improve efficiency and transparency within the supply chain. There are steps that should be taken to support the movement of goods. I welcome the President's signature on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. This includes much-needed investments in traditional infrastructure and will result in long-term benefits to the supply chain to help minimize future bottlenecks. Furthermore, senators are working on legislative solutions. I recently introduced the Freight Act with Senators Capito, Moran, Young, Blackburn, Thune, and Sullivan. This legislation would spur improvements to our freight transportation system, streamline the certification process for truck drivers, address unlawful shipping conduct, and provide oversight of transportation operations. Senator Blackburn has legislation to incentivize a private sector-led chassis pool in Memphis. As a major inland port, Memphis needs to increase its ability to operate more efficiently in our interconnected freight system, which stresses from coast to coast. And I want to applaud Senator Moran for leading a letter to the Federal Maritime Commission, which I joined. That letter encouraged the Commission to engage with the ports and swiftly address any unjust or unreasonable aspects of the new dwell fees. There are limits to what the government can do. The challenges facing our supply chains are enormous, as I said, complex, and involve numerous stakeholders around the globe. If we're not careful, a heavy government hand could result in additional congestion rather than solutions. But thank you to the witnesses, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence. I look forward to the testimony.
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Wicker. Our